Hello, what's going on YouTube? This is J Money here, and I'm finally biting the bullet, and I decided to make a deck profile featuring windups even when we don't have our ban list yet. Now, the reason why I waited and why I wanted to wait to make this deck profile is because we had just got our windup Zen maintenance in Flames of Destruction. It will be live as of, I think, 2 days from now. 2 or 3 days from now, and you know, there's a possibility that Konami could easily release Carrier from the ban list as a way to support Flood, and if that happens, the wind-up deck itself changes drastically, because then it becomes a way to turbo out Carrier, because Carrier is basically your win condition because it is a double helix. The fact that Carrier was double helix before double helix is pretty insane, and I honestly think, you know, Carrier was just ahead of its time, possibly, because as Simo says, if you give any deck a double helix, it will be good. And Carrier is definitely that double helix, but this is TCG Konami, and they're very unpredictable. They can easily forget or just leave the Carrier alone for some reason, and so at this point I just figured, you know, I'm going to do a profile anyway, because that's just how unpredictable they are. Now, I've seen a lot of deck profiles regarding windups. I've seen trap cards, I've seen Predaplant engines, and all that stuff. And although some of that's nice, I don't agree necessarily with Predaplant engines and stuff, even though it's really good. It takes up a lot of main and extra deck space to execute, and you need so many other pieces for the deck to function for as long as we don't have Carrier in the game, to where, you know, it's hard to keep your deck size down. In a way. And the thing about trap cards and all that stuff is, I know a lot of us are nostalgic for the potential return of windups, but that doesn't mean we operate the same way as 2012, to where if your Carrier gets hit by an effect veil, you can set a Book of Moon in a dimensional prison and pass. You can't do that in 2018. You're going to lose the game really, really fast. Links help the deck out a lot, and you want to combo as much as possible. You want to turbo the deck as much as possible, because that's what the deck is really to its core. It puts out a bunch of bosses on board, so any fast deck, any turbo-ish kind of deck, you know, go off of its strengths and make it pure speed, whether you're going first or second, and that's how you're going to end up having success. So we're going to get it started. For starters, we're going to do, obviously, you max out on Magicians, you max out on Sharks, no matter what. They're the bread and butter of the entire deck, period. There's really no debating it. If you are not playing max Magicians and Sharks, you're probably not doing too hot. And that also goes with Rat. Rat is your Monster Reborn in the deck. It's a level 3. It's perfect for making Carrier and all that stuff. It brings back your Magician, it resets effects. For those of you who aren't aware of windups, back in the day, windups are essentially like Firewall Dragon, to where, you know, Firewall's bounce effect was once while it's face up on the field. Windups are the same way. Windups, every single one of their effects can only be used when they're face up on the field. So if I decide to use this windup rat and change it to defense position to special summon a windup from the graveyard, and it somehow stays on the field, I can't use its effect again on the following turn because it's already used its shotgun effect. You need to find a way to get it off the field and get it back on the field for its effects to reset. So in that sense, you may as well consider those cards soft once returns in a way. Windup Hunters, it's a win condition. For those of you who were not here back in the 2012 format, Windup Hunter was the most notorious card of that format because, I mean, it got Carrier limited, obviously. Well, not obviously, but as long as you can keep using Windup Hunter, you can keep overlaying into Carriers, summoning Rats, summoning Hunters. Hunter can sack any windup, even extra deck monsters, to discard a card out of your opponent's hand. And that was really, really painful because you can loop 4 cards at the very least from your opponent's hand if you open Magician Shark. But hand loops are still very, very viable. I've done some combos with them on the last video. So you still want to play wind-up punter because you don't have carrier. 3 wind-up bats, they're essentially more wind-up rats. You can never not have enough wind-up rats. But this also does have its uses by itself. One, the fact that it's a level 1 monster means you can link it off with Link Kuriboh to trigger a firewall effect special summon, because you will end up in some awkward spots in a combo where you have firewall and just one monster, which would probably be this, and you have everything you need because you've probably used the bat to get the last piece you wanted out of the graveyard to make the firewall in the first place, so you can really get your combos going. But you need a way to trigger firewall's effect, and you know, this is a perfect way to do it because it's a level 1. It's also a machine target, so if you machine dupe this, you're getting some insane value. 2 wind-up kittens. Not a lot of people play kitten. I've seen a lot of people play rabbit, but the problem with rabbit is that back in 2012, you could use this effect a few times with a factory on board, get some pluses and all that, and be fine. But in 2018, you don't get that many turns to really do anything. You know, if you were trying to trigger, if you're using rabbit to trigger factory, you're probably in a losing situation to where you can't really perform any combos. And that's why I'm maxing out on hunters and not really playing any rabbits. Just going to tell you that now. But this card, you're not going to always win the dice roll. And if you go first, you loop hunters to hit your opponent's hand. But if you go second, you can keep looping wind-up kitten, because once while it's faithful on the field, you can target a monster on your opponent's board and bounce it to the hand. Also, it's a level 2 beast, which means it's also transmodifiable into wind-up rat after you've already used its effect. So it's in a way, transmodify with kitten is a lot better if you're going for your, like, say, your maintenance combo with your magician shark. Instead of summoning a rat off the second magician, you can summon this and then transmodify it into a rat to where it's actually active. And so then you can use your magicians to make the Zen maintenance. And then you can grab your factory, play factory, use the rat that's live, summon your magician back. So one of them is reset, you search off factory, and then you can use Zen maintenance to banish the rat and summon another rat, and triggering magician's effect, and then using that rat to summon the other magician from the graveyard. And then, yeah, the combos are just absolutely insane. But that's it for the wind-ups. For the non-wind-ups, we are playing 3 Summoner Monk because you want to make as many wind-up magicians as possible. Since magician is semi-limited, we are going to end up needing more opportunities to summon magician from the deck, and it's another way to get a full hand loop. And if all else fails, if you don't even have a shark in hand, you can just go into rank 4 and sit on Baguska and pass and all that if you really need to. 3 chickens because we are playing a synchro. It also serves some purpose going first. If you drop it as a level 3 monster, if carrier ever comes back, this will be a hardcore staple, because if you go first, it's a carrier. But if you go second, it's a level 4, and you can make an easy level 7 synchro to mess with your opponent's board. 1 rescue ferret. I was playing 2, but I needed more space for cards to allow me to go second. So I am playing some procs. There are some proxies in here, and that's simply because they're all nightmare cards, and I couldn't get my hands on them. There were some at Sneak, but once again, nobody was willing to sell me these cards. I had all the money, and I was willing to overpay just to have them, but nobody would get rid of them. So one of the proxies is going to be that Corrupts Nightmare Ibli, the level 2 Cyber Girl, where if she's linked with, you can summon it to your opponent's board, and the player controlling the card cannot special summon any monsters except by link summon. We have Destrudo, because it's Destrudo, we're wanting to break some boards. And we have a copy of Mermer for reasons I'll go into later. That's it for the monsters. On to the spells. We have Wind-Up Factory. It's still one of the best searchers in the game because it stays on the board and it continues to search. If you have multiples, you search off of multiples and all that. You know, they each get a search each turn every time a wind-up effect activates. 2 machine duplication. Again, if you see this card, 9 times out of 10 you can access Wind Up Bat, whether it be through Wind Up Magician, or Zen Maintenance, whatever. You're likely to access it. If you machine dupe a bat, you're probably in a winning situation. 2 Dragon Shrines. I didn't want to play Mortar Shudos, and I didn't really want to play Ravine, because I don't there are some situations where you don't want to neg from your hand. And not only that, but this kind of gets around Ghost Ogre, so there's that. And I needed more spells to discard for Summoner Monk, so I have about 15 spells in the deck, I believe. I needed more options to go second. You know, I would play things like Forbidden Chalice or Dark Hole, but this kind of build is a build I actually prefer to go second in. I would only be more comfortable going first with this deck if Carrier was legal. If Carrier was unbanned, I would have no problem going first. So 9 times out of 10, I'm probably going to choose to go second against my opponent. And so the theory with the Mind Control over Dark Hole or Forbidden Chalice or something is, if your opponent has any sort of disruptions or any negates, they're going to negate the Dark Hole or the Chalice. They're going to negate those things anyway. But if your opponent just so happens to not have negates, like let's say they have a Conductor Tyranno on the board or whatever, you can actually snatch it, or you can bait their effects, whatever. But, you know, if the best thing, you know, best scenario happens, you take a monster and you use it for link fodder and all that stuff, and it helps break boards. Alright, now for the last 6 spells, we have 6 Monster Reborns. Actual Monster Reborn, Soul Charge, 2 ARS Rock Sunrise, and World Legacy Successions. Now, this is the new Monster Reborn that came out of Flames of Destruction. It is essentially a Monster Reborn for any monster in your graveyard, as long as you have a Link monster with a Link arrow that's open, because you target a monster and you special it to a Link zone, and that's it. Now with ARS Rock Sunrise, it's a Monster Reborn for Beast type monsters. And to go ahead and give you the exact effect, it says target a beast type monster in your graveyard, you special summon that target. If you do, all face-up monsters your opponent controls currently lose 200 attack for each beast, plant, and wing beast type monster currently in your graveyard until the end of this turn. You can only activate 1 ARS Rock Sunrise per turn. So, basically, you just want to revive Wind Up Rat and continue comboing off. Or you can revive a Wind Up Kitten if you want to, you know, disrupt more, or get more monsters off the field to clear the way for an OTK. Alright, and now the main deck is 41 cards, and again, it is kind of a build that you kind of want to go second in, because with some of the extra deck choices I'll go into. But first, we're going to start with 1 Zen Maintenance. Now, I wish I had space for 2, but there's just so many links that you need that you can only you can only fit 1. And really, if all honesty, if the first one gets stopped, you're probably going to lose the game anyway. For Link 1s, we got Link Spider, we got Link Rebo, and we have Nightmare Mermaid. So we are indeed playing some Nightmares in here. So that being said, we're going to go on to we're going on to Link 2s. We're going to go Proxy Dragon, Underclock Taker for starters. I chose Proxy Dragon because there are a lot of situations to where if you're in a combo, you would have like double Hunter on the board, or double Wind Up Rat on the board, or double Wind Up Bat on the board. A lot of situations you control a lot of doubles, and things like Ib or Nightmares aren't necessarily viable to go into, and so I chose Proxy Dragon. Now, I probably should choose Binary Sorceress, but I do play some tokens in this deck as well, because of the Mare. And we got Nightmare Cerberus, and we have Nightmare Goblin. It's, you know, they're all color coded and all that good stuff. So Cerberus is good. It protects your stuff from card effects, which is basically a better version of Ib. It protects all your linked monsters by card effects. So link 3s, you have Trigate Wizard and your Nightmare Unicorn. Your Unicorn is Unicorn's got Gaia Saber arrows, and it spins back cards to the deck. And during the draw phase, you know, for every co-linked Nightmare monster on the board, you get to draw that many cards during the draw phase. It's good. It helps break boards and all that, so it's needed. Now for your Link 4s, you got Firewall Dragon, you got Saryuja, and you have Nightmare Griffin. Any Link deck, if you're not playing these 3 cards, something's up. And for the non-links, we have Photon Pipe Operative for your wind-up combos, for resetting your rats, just in case, and your Yazi for your synchro plays. The reason why I choose Yazi over Black Rose is because if you Black Rose in a deck like this, your turn's generally over and kind of finished. But with this can bait out negates, and it can in turn get itself destroyed, and it can summon a worm from the deck, which is the Mirror, producing 4 tokens and going into your Skull Deeds. So you can either bait negates or actually be able to rid yourself of a threat and giving yourself a free Skull Deed at the same time. Alright, so onto the side deck. The side deck is also quite not ready, because there are some cards that are Flood that I need to put in here, but I didn't get my hands on them. So for going second options, we got Twin Twisters, Evenly Matched, and the third Mind Control. These Evenlys right here are supposed to be red reboots. I don't know about Evenly with red reboot in the game, especially for games 2 and 3, when your opponent gets to go first, and they're going to start expecting stuff like this, so they play a cheap option to out this card and all that good stuff. And now for Twin Twisters, there are scenarios where I'll have like a rat and like a magician, or a rat and like something else engraved, but no other way to put 2 monsters on the board. And Twin Twisters is a way for me to pitch a wind-up monster so I can really start getting effects going, especially if I have like a factory or something in hand, and it can really kickstart and jumpstart some plays. Now, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, because Altergeist, you know, I predict Altergeist is going to come out of the woodworks, and not only that, but you still have True Dracos and stuff in the game, and you know, you still need to, you know, some way to get rid of back row. So now for some going first cards, we have Called by the Grave. Now I will slide this in every time when I know for a fact I'm going first, because your Wind-Up Magician really needs to go off. Your Wind-Up Magician does not need to get stopped by Nash Blossom whatsoever. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and go on to the last few going first cards, or packages, should I say, being Waterfront and 3 Kaijus. I will slide this in if I'm going first, so, you know, if I get a good gauge of what deck my opponent is playing, I will slide these in, make a firewall, you know, search a Gamma Seal, drop the Gamma Seal, win the game, and all the good stuff. And even and for games 3, I'll just keep it in. I'll keep it in the deck, so I have more cards to get rid of threats. Now I do have some extra deck monsters in the side deck because I just do not have the space for it in my extra deck, and that is Abyss Dweller, Baguska, and Nightmare Phoenix. These depends on my matchup, because as I said earlier, there are some times where you have a Summoner Monk and a spell and no Shark in hand, or no other way to put a monster on board like a Chicken or a Deshrudo, and sometimes your best play would be to sit on a Baguska and pass. Now I would slide this in if I was going first, obviously, and against like 60 card or like BAs or something like that, I would do Dweller instead, just to stun my opponent for a turn, so I can, you know, take another turn to potentially, you know, do something with, especially if I have a wind-up factory or something on the board, you know, getting an extra search. And Nightmare Phoenix, because again, there are a few more back row decks, or decks that are playing more back row. Altergeist being one of them, so I want to be ready and all that good stuff, and that's really it. So that's it for the deck profile. Yeah, there are a lot of ways to play this deck. There are a lot of ways to execute things. In theory, as in on paper, is if you're just outright just playing, you know, just playing test hands and all that. But when it comes to actual practice, you know, whether you're going first and potentially dealing with hand traps, or going second and dealing with on-field, on-board disruptions, that's when things get tricky with this deck. That's when you know, need to already have the other avenues worked out on what it is that you're going to do next before it happens. You know, because when you start trying to think of what you're trying to do next, or what you need to do next, when you come upon that situation, you're likely going to make a misplay, you're likely going to make a mistake. So, just like World Chalice, it is best to practice what plays and follow-up plays and new play strings when, and I do mean when, you get disrupted. So as you can see, hands like this is pretty good. That, you know, I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty good. You know, going first or second, this is good. You know, I can handle my opponent, or I can go second and make Yazi with the Wind Up Magician Shark combo, summon Mermere, and still have a bunch of wind-ups on the board, and really go in on my opponent. You know, now, of course, if my opponent has a disruption on board, I already have ways of dealing with those said disruptions in the form of things like, you know, Nightmare Cerberus and all that other good stuff. You know. Or I can just use the Yazi as pure bait. You know, purely just to, you know, yeah, bait out the negates. It's destroyed anyway. I still get the Yazi, whatever. So, let me know what you guys think about this deck profile. As I did say, as I mentioned earlier, Wind-Up Kittens are transmodifiable. You can transmod it into your Wind-Up Rat because they are both Earth Beasts, except one's level 2, one's level 3. But you didn't see that in my deck, and that is because I in fact did have it in the deck, but realistically, I need more options to go second. I needed more than just the one Yazi and all that good stuff. You know, I have 6 Monster Reborns, but you know that can only get you so far. You know, I needed more, and that's where the mind controls came in. I ended up taking out my transmodifiers for the mind controls, just in case anybody was wondering. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Leave me some feedback on your deck profile, or on the deck profile itself. You know, as you can see, I didn't play any Predaplan engines, no invokers, no nothing. Not even double summon, really. You would think that double summon, or even chain summoning, because again, disruptions are guaranteed, so chain summoning is just effortless and you get 3 normal summons. But it's like, you know, do I want the chain summonings, or do I want a mind control, you know, to potentially actually resolve if my opponent doesn't have any negates? You know, I had to really weigh those options, and I suppose having double summons can allow me to play a little bit more if I have like access to a magician with a summoner monk or something, but like no shark in hand or some other wind up. You know, I suppose that it could go that way, but again, mind control is essentially accomplishes the same thing. And if your opponent has a negate, like, you know, you weren't going to get very far with that double summon. So thank you guys very much for watching. This is J Money, and I am signing out.